Call meeting to order. Water Management District meeting of March the 17th. Let's roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Here.
Director Daniels has not arrived yet. Director Edwards,
Here.
Director Lindor,
Here.
Director Paul.
Here. Can you hear me?
Yes, attending via Zoom. Director Oglesby is absent tonight. Chair Riley.
Here. We have quorum. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
for all. Okay, to the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There are no additions or corrections except for some edits in the annual report that we'll talk about when the item's called.
When the item come up. Okay, fair enough. Oral communications, anyone wanting to address the board on an item not listed as the agenda, as an item on the agenda? Free to do so now. They have 3 minutes. Anyone like to address the board? Nobody in the room?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, we'll return it to the board. Okay, 2 minutes and the treasurer's report. Any comments or questions by the board? Motion to accept the consent calendar?
I so move.
Second. All in favor, roll call.
Roll call vote.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels. Here. Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes,
Chair Riley.
Yes. Consent calendar is passed.
Director Daniels, we were voting on the consent calendar. Do we have your,
You do. It would be a yes as well.
thank you.
Okay, general manager's report.
And while Sarah is pulling up the compliance reporting, I do have a couple of announcements to make. A reminder to everyone, it is Fix a Leak Week. And our ads in the weekly publications will reflect that later this week, but wanted to remind all of the viewers who might possibly be viewing this now or even viewing it later, you can always fix an old toilet flapper or any other sneaky leak within your purview, and we encourage you to do so. The other is an announcement that the district has hired an assistant general manager. That press release went out today, so you'll see some reporting on it, but I just want to read from this. Monterey Peninsula Water Management District announces the arrival of Mike McCullough as the new assistant general manager. McCullough has resided in the area for over 25 years, understands how important the management of local water resources is for the local communities. Apparently I'm quoted in our release. We did a national search looking for a dedicated water professional. And lo and behold, the top candidate was literally next door at Monterey One Water. Mike has proven local knowledge of the complex local water issues and brings a new perspective and energy for our customers, staff, and the board. He worked at Monterey One for 13 years. Focus there was to bring the Pure Water Monterey project online. The concept of replenishing groundwater with advanced purified recycled water went from planning to production in only 7 years. And Mr. McCullough helped secure low interest loans from State Water Resources Control Board and the EPA. And he scoured various grant funding opportunities, ultimately through the base project and the expansion project, securing about $80 million in grant funding. we're very proud to have somebody who's known in the community. And he'll be an integral part of this team. And we look forward to working with him. He starts April 3rd with us. So,
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
good.
yeah,
Good to hear.
now I have to find something for him to do. So that will go into the PowerPoint and welcome Mr. McCullough. If you're, I think he's watching tonight.
Yes.
Yep. So congratulations. So with that, first,
Well, just going back on that, we'll meet him at the next board meeting. I just will.
yes. And staff will have the opportunity to meet him this coming Friday. Yeah. All right. Next slide, please. There we go. A couple of things to point out here. Of course, CalAm remains compliant with the cease and desist order in order 9510. The Monterey Peninsula Water Resource System has, we do the quarterly water budget, which is an item on tonight's agenda as well. And we've been tracking actual versus those targets, and everything remains looking good. Here you can see that actual on the Carmel River is very close to the target to date. But we are watching carefully because there's still, over 2,000 acre feet of the water right to continue to access with only 7 months remaining in the water year. So we'll keep our eye on that. From the Seaside Groundwater Basin, nothing can be done about Hidden Hills until they're connected into the main system, so that Laguna Seca number will continue to build up a deficit. But you can see the coastal, which is most of the pumping in the Seaside Basin, is pretty close to target, which is good. The next slide.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make up the difference of the 150? Is it just the time of the year?
Yeah, it's the time of the year, and frankly, because it's been raining, they can access what are called Table 13 rights, which are also Carmel River rights.
Mm-hmm.
But we also want to maximize injection to ASR. And so when you've got your choice of how to use the Carmel River water, allocating some to ASR, some to Table 13 leaves a little less to come from the Carmel River. And similarly, what you're about to see here, they've left a little bit of pure water Monterey water in the ground. So when you look at the actual, in this case, we've actually delivered to them or sold to them 1,664 acre feet. So they will need to pick up some of that pure water Monterey water out of the ground. And so it's a process of managing your points of extraction and also your system constraints.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Through the chair, Dave, you mentioned something about Hidden Hill not put it in. I thought they were added into the loop.
Well,
What happened there?
right. So there were 3 satellites that were deemed to be part of the main system, and that's
Right.
where we are, Ryan Ranch, and then Bishop, which is Pasadena and York School and that area. Those 2 were connected into the main system via pipeline that we approved a distribution system amendment,
Mm-hmm.
which we did probably 4 or even 5 years ago on the amendment.
Right.
And then Hidden Hills still has a single well that's it's deemed to be in the Seaside Aquifer, but they've not yet interconnected with the system. And it was a part of the EIR for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. So the desal plant and Pure Water Monterey, that whole EIR setting, but they just haven't done the interconnection yet.
Do we have any control over that to make sure it get done? It sounds like it's something that should have been done.
No, they want to do it, but the original proposal was a connection kind of up in the Laurellis grade area that would have been direct to the Carmel Valley, and that would have been a direct use of Carmel River water, which would be in defiance of the CDO.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the proposal is that they'll connect off the end of the pipeline that's serving Bishop area, the Pasadena area.
Okay,
But yeah, it'll take a while to engineer it and get it done. And, you know, our preference would be to have the CDO lifted before adding that one in.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for the update.
Table 13 rights, you can see 75 acre feet have been attributed, and that's just Carmel River water, but you can only access it if it's a good wet year or a normal to wet year. And then Sand City actually had been doing 15 acre feet per month. Last month it did not produce anything. So we'll be monitoring that one as well.
That's me.
Through the chair, can I ask another question? When do we start to see ASR? Because it seems it's wet right now and.
Right. So we've been injecting, we'll have a slide on that in just a couple. So we'll talk about what we're saving. But on the withdrawal side, it's now kind of worked its way down into, call it a drought reserve. It's kind of the storage of last resort to produce. So if demand was really high, we would tap ASR, or if some of these matching of sources and well capacity were out of line a little bit, you might have to tap ASR just to balance the numbers. And so when the quarterly water budget people meet, they may likely have that conversation of whether or not, our preference is to maximize the river water right, the legal water right, maximize the natural safe yield from the Seaside Basin, because those are the two most affordable water sources. But if ASR is needed to balance those numbers, it might get tapped. But otherwise, we prefer to just store it until it's needed.
So, okay, so this is recovery. There's the word. So we're still pulling the water, pumping it to the Seaside Basin and storing it.
Exactly.
Even if we're not using it and it's not showing up on this chart.
Right. It's like the
Got it.
reservoir behind a dam, just,
Got it.
fill when it's wet.
So we maximize whenever we can, up to what number, what level, how many acre feet a year?
Well, the best year we had was probably 2017. I'll get the year wrong, but it was 2,345 acre feet, I believe. Our water right would allow us, if it was just a rollicking, almost flood level every day, our water right would allow us to inject 5,000.
Okay.
But we would very likely have either well constraints in the valley or injection constraints over here. And we currently have some injection constraints. The
Got it.
team's been doing really well, which I'll show you in a couple of slides on injection.
Okay. That makes sense.
Just before you leave
Yeah.
that slide, the table 13 rights, is that kind of an automatic priority to use that water when you have it available?
Yeah, yes and no. You can kind of only use it in the Carmel Valley area, the place of use. And so you're meeting local demand with the table 13, and then it's time limited. It's only December through May as well. And so you kind of take it as you can get it. And what could happen is if you maximize your table 13 and you maximize your injections, you might end up coming up short on your regular Carmel River water rate, that 3376.
So you balance those too.
Yeah, but and occasionally you will see from us a little bit of a backward correcting after time has passed by a month or a couple of months. They may reassign some of the Carmel River extraction from one right to the other. But it's mostly just an accounting
Okay.
issue in the winter.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, I got it. Thanks.
The other the next slide, please, Sarah. And here's where you can see that they were a little more aggressive on the river in the first part of the water year. And so they're coming back kind of in line with the budget or the target. but they didn't really take a whole lot under the water right. So that's why, we'll be watching the next 7 months to ensure that they're at least achieving, 3,000 acre feet or, preferably 3,300 acre feet, the legal water right. And then the other takeaway is down in the lower right-hand corner, we are 111 acre feet over last year. And you may remember the summary at the end of last year is, we were 140 acre feet under the prior year. And that's why you can't just rely that everything is a trend. And I would attribute this one being to a little more irrigation because we didn't get as much rain in January. So it's always kind of, give or take 100 acre feet is you can bounce around. And so when I gave the summary that we were 140 acre feet better last year than the prior year, I think I also recommended don't count on that being a continuing trend. And so you can see that we're backtracking a little bit. And frankly, when we get to the rain, I'll tell you a little bit about dry year versus normal year and so forth. So next slide.
May I ask one more question?
Uh-huh.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So where do we get to see how much we're getting to pull off the river and store? Where does that number come in? I
Yeah.
think that's really helpful. You've clarified for me all the zeros that I've seen. And
Yeah,
where to
so-
put that.
There's typically a footnote.
There was one on the other
Yeah,
page.
Footnote 4 on both tables.
302 and 75.
That's just through the end of February, but we'll have a chart on the ASR storage in about three charts from now.
Okay, great.
This is rainfall, again, through the end of February. As of February, we were at 78% of the long-term average. But I can tell you, March, we've already matched the March long-term average, which we've already gotten 3.49, so 3.5 inches in March. And, we're expecting some more tonight. North of us, they'll probably get a little bit of rain next week. And the 10-day forecast has possible rain on the last 2 days of March here. So March will be at least as good as prior years.
One more question.
Go
Has
ahead.
there been any difficulty capturing this information or any of the information that we need due to budget cuts?
No.
Okay,
Yeah. And we were worried when they announced NOAA layoffs, and then they hit primarily in the Weather Service and our fish regulators who are also under NOAA. We're not sure what their fate is going to be, but we haven't had a whole lot of problem with that area yet.
but the storm data and the water data and the rainfall
Yeah.
data has all been,
Yeah, we have such a good gauging system. Now we share gauges with the USGS Geological Survey, so there may be an issue at some point.
'cause that's
With
NOAA,
them.
right? Isn't that part of?
I think they're in the Bureau of Reclamation,
Okay.
but I'm not positive.
Thank you.
Yep. Next slide, Sarah, please. So this is the rain gauge data from San Clemente, the old San Clemente Dam site. The blue bars are daily totals and the red line is the cumulative. So again, as you can see from the very beginning of March through current, we picked up that extra 3.5 inches. So we're at 15.52
Wow.
inches for the year, which if that was the last rain that we got for the whole season, we would actually be in a dry or below normal year.
Wow.
So, people are saying, "Oh, what a great year, what a great year," but it's looking much more like we'll land around normal as opposed to wet or very wet. The range for normal is 17 to 21.7 inches. So, basically we need another 1.5 inches to get to normal. So we'll see what happens there. Next slide. This is stream flow, unimpaired stream flow. We're currently at only 49% of long-term average. And that speaks a little bit to how perhaps our demand is up because of irrigation. People didn't turn their irrigation systems off because it wasn't raining until later in January, and so forth. That level, if it stopped today, would be a dry year. But it's highly likely, given what's happened and the way the flows are, that we will end up being below normal by the end of March, and then hopefully on into normal by the end of the water year. So, and then strangely, as we've always said, the Carmel Valley alluvial aquifer, it's full. It's at 101% of long-term average. So we've always signaled that, you know, one good week or one good month of rain can fill up the aquifer there. So this next chart is aquifer storage and recovery injection. So this answers the injection question. So we didn't really even have enough to begin injection until I think it was the 5th of February. So what little rain there was prior to that just, you know, wetted the watershed and started building up, but there was not surplus until February. And we did have a little shutdown based on our, not on technological reasons, but just based on water rights reasons. As you can see, the gap. So the yellow bars are daily injection and the blue is the cumulative. And you can see daily, we're kind of averaging, you know, around 13 acre feet, which is really maxing out the injection capacity that we currently have. If we had ASR wells number 3 and 4 available to us, then we could be doing 17 or 18 acre feet per day. So this is, as I said, we're maxing out, and we're, you know, it's looking pretty good. We've got probably, if it doesn't rain again, we've probably got at least 3 more weeks of injection, and it's likely that we'll get some rain. So,
That's good.
so 445 acre feet to date.
Compared to the problems we had in the last couple of years, not having
Yeah, well, we still have
the wells. And
Yep, and we still have there's no Carmel Valley problems per se. You know, cross fingers, don't want to jinx it. But we are down on injection capacity because of the production needs and ASR 3 and 4.
Mhm.
And then finally, a couple of photos. So this is a fish weir on the Carmel River with a couple of our employees working it. And what you see here is the wide area to the kind of to the top of the photo is considered outflow. If you were in a kayak, you could go over that and get beyond the weir. But it creates a barrier so that the fish don't go upstream. So they go around that space and they come in down towards the bottom of the screen. You see what looks like a kind of a trapezoidal portion to the right of the box that the guy is in.
Mhm.
That's an entry port. So the fish go through and then they get trapped in there, and on a daily basis, we free them, generally tagging them with the radio read pit tags so that the arrays that are in various parts of the river can read the fish. Every fish has its own unique identifying number. If we capture a breeding adult that was tagged earlier in its life by us, either at the fish rearing facility or in the river, then we can read that it's a returnee. So it's kind of and these weirs exist on several rivers in Northern California, but we had ours taken out by the heavy rains last year. And so it got repaired at a little bit of an expense to the district. And then we recently had to get some more hardware, but it's working really well. And next slide, Sarah, if you would.
Is that the cod bridge?
It's right by the bridge to everywhere by the cod. Yeah, in fact, in the previous picture, you can see the cod facility in the background up on the bank. But my staff's going to get upset with me for revealing where it's located.
I'm so sorry.
That's and then here, this is just Friday afternoon or Friday morning rather, last week. And that's a pretty sizable, beautiful steelhead specimen. So, and it's kind of exciting because actually this gentleman, Kian, didn't have this much action with the weir last year. So I think he's a little excited about it. We're all excited about
That's
it.
wonderful.
Yeah. And that concludes my,
Well, he's sure
my
excited.
report.
Um,
It's just good to show, it's good to add photographs periodically, just so we can see the real world side of things as opposed to just the data. Anyway, this is a nice addition to, not all the time, but whatever. All right,
please,
yes.
through the chair, thank you. Dave, amnesty program, how are we doing? Just remind the district that we have it and how we doing and it's going to end.
Yeah. First, I have to get my 20 to pay off the bet with Stephanie that she said for sure you were going to ask. And I said, no way.
And she never called me or anything to talk to me, but they know I was going to do it anyway.
If you look in your packet at item, and this goes to our
Yeah.
listeners as well,
Right.
the report under item,
It's in there. I know.
I know it is 17, has the statistics, kind of the second. Yeah, let's see. Permit compliance.
Actually, Dave, I can give a quick,
Oh, there you are. Good.
yeah, no, I can give a quick update on this. So as of March 6th, it looks like that we have sent
Recording stopped.
initial
Recording
letter.
in progress.
We have 190 in the county and 135 in the city of Carmel left to send. So we started with about 1,500 properties, and they have all been through at least one letter, some second letters, and some have actually had non-compliance notices recorded when they've ignored us. That usually gets people's attention and they contact us and arrange for their final inspections. So things are going very well with the program. It does run until October. So we still have quite a bit of time to clear things up, and it is reported in your monthly conservation report.
Okay, and are we getting information out to the cities, reminding them that this is coming up? I haven't went down to Seaside City Council and yet, but
The city staff are working with us on this, yes.
okay, good, good.
But if you do look at item 14, we did receive one letter on this program from the city of Monterey,
Right.
and we have addressed their concerns.
Yeah.
Likely not in the manner they had hoped, but in a manner that's fair to everybody.
Okay. And since we're on water demand, not trying to take you out, but in the information in that 17A, I see a lot of red in water demand. I'm looking at page 101.
Yeah.
So in that report, the February report had a lot of red in it. Is we in trouble, or is that because we buying stuff?
So you mean the rebate report?
Yes.
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 Yes. Stephanie, do you have an answer there?
Exhibit 17A.
You know, I don't have an answer. No, we're fine on the rebates. So I don't.
Okay, well, there's a lot of red in there. And
I'll take a look at it, but no, there's nothing unusual there.
Okay, all right, I'm just trying to make sure. I don't want a surprise. And I know he reported it, so, okay.
I think it's just the font color.
But that's paid by Cal-Am, right?
I don't know who it is, but I looked at the report and I seen red and.
And you saw red and you see red.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad, so. Okay, that's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Chair Riley? I do have Michael Bear at the raised hand. Not sure if you want to.
No, yeah, let's go out to the public, yes.
Michael, when you're ready?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? We're good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, that's good to see everybody. I haven't seen you for a while. I was concerned from Mr. Stoltz's report that, you know, Cal-Am, there's still 2,000 acre feet of budget on the river with 7 months to go. I remember it was either last year or the year before when they got into the summer season, they couldn't take the water. Now wintertime seems to me like the best time to be taking water out the river. And it just got, so I know you're watching it, and I hope there's something that can be done to goose Cal-Am to use that water before we get to summertime. And it just got me thinking in another way too, when you mentioned that the wells 3 and 4 are being used by Cal-Am for distribution. So you can't be injecting ASR water, and you'd be injecting another 3 or 4 acre feet a day if that wasn't the case. And it just got me wondering, like a thought experiment, and I don't expect an answer necessarily now, but something you can think about. If you were managing the water instead of Cal-Am, would you be making different decisions about how the water is being taken off the river at what time, and how my understanding is it's Monterey 1 water that is causing the wells 3 and 4 to be used for distribution. Is there a way to come up with an ideal plan if you didn't have to navigate Cal-Am, if you were in charge of it like you will be in the future, that would just maximize the cheapest water? The customers are paying for the cheapest water first. And that's not Cal-Am's priority, but I think it will be yours. And I know you're busy people and have many things to worry about, but it'd be interesting for you guys to come up with a plan, like if you were in charge, to manage the water differently, if you indeed would, or if you think Cal-Am's doing it the right way. So I'm not looking for an answer. It's more of a suggestion, unless you have an answer, but I would think it would take some thought and figuring that out. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Well, I'll answer the part that has no politics in it, and that's you'll see in the quarterly water budget under item 7 that about 790 acre feet from the Carmel River is being budgeted for April, May, June. So that would leave July, August, September, and then whatever is happening this month of March to pick up the remainder of that roughly 2,000 that I had mentioned. So, 1,300. So we will be, obviously watching it through the quarterly water budget process. And as far as doing it differently, there are many different ways to extract the water. But some of it's driven by time limited water rights. Remember, I mentioned table 13, you can only get it when it's in a wet year or a normal year, and that's only available December through May. And so what you're looking at is some of the sources are time dependent. You also want to protect the fisheries, and so you don't want to really maximize the river withdrawals in June, July, and August. So there's different factors that come in, and that quarterly water budget setting is the place to do it. And we have a voice there. The fish regulators, both federal and state, are involved, and Cal-Am. So, they pull out their pencils too, and they try to do what they can do. One other area of concern for them, which is not ours, is revenue recognition. So you put a surcharge on the bill to collect, to pay for purchase water from Pure Water Monterey. If you're the company, you want to make sure that you've collected enough of that surcharge so that you can actually pay for the water you've already paid for. And so there's what I call revenue recognition requirements as well. And so it's kind of a mixture of all those things. But, I've got my own fisheries people who want it done one way, and, they'd go all in on winter withdrawals if they could, and no pumping from the river in June, July, or August. But the water right is a year-round water right. And so if you have to, you can move it to those summer months or a portion of it in the summer months. So it's a balancing act.
And it's clear, as far as I'm concerned, it seems like it's clear to the committee that develops the water strategy what our priorities are. I don't know if Cal-Am has been specific about what their priorities are, but I think our priorities are at least clear to the group.
Well, and also, when Pure Water, the base project, when it came online in 2020, that was the opening of the door for us to not rely as much on ASR every year, so that we could start banking it. And so we've built up the ASR reserves to, it's over 3,000 acre feet of just stored water at this point. And, hopefully this 445 grows to, another couple hundred at least, and that we don't have to tap it either. So, yeah, it's not the same every year, and it's not all driven by weather. And, it's a combination of the things I laid out.
Okay, good. Any other comments or questions from the board? I'll go back to the public comment if there's any here that want to comment or question. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. We were on GM report and no action required. Now it's report from the district council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, we do have our written report on page 23 of your packet. Due to the non-events of the month, I'll be a quick update. Your report remains largely unchanged from the last couple months. The portions that have been changed have been highlighted in yellow. I'll just quickly go over those. For the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association's lawsuits, the brief refresher, that's a total of 6 lawsuits that are being simultaneously resolved through one settlement. We're in the midst of that settlement. It looks like it's going to be falling within what the board has been talking about, and so we'll have an update for you once that is finalized. Regarding the district versus Cal-Am, this is the public ownership's the acquisition. That case management conference was scheduled for May 13th. Next steps is we're going to keep pursuing and look for any prejudgment positions. Regarding the water district versus LAFCO, the Cal-Am and LAFCO jointly requested extensions of time to file the opening briefs. That has been pushed to March 20th, and it may be pushed out again. We'll wait and see. That's a very brief update, but there really isn't anything to report that's different than what you've already received.
And next month, I'll try to give a report on the second item that he mentioned, the public acquisition of the Cal-Am assets, because I've made some very pointed questions to all 3 of our attorneys to kind of get a better handle on what the impact of the potential Supreme Court review of the appellate court decision in Apple Valley might mean, and also what we understand is likely to happen, which is a motion for stipulated judgment on the eminent domain case. And there are just some timeline issues that.
And Dave, I'm going to pause you there because we're getting into a little bit of strategy that will be best discussed in closed session.
Yeah, I'm just saying that you'll have a schedule.
Okay.
Based on those responses.
Because it's 2 cases with LAFCO, right?
Well,
We got one at San Jose Superior and we got the local case here with the buyout. So,
yeah, well, what we have just with LAFCO is the Superior Court decision has been appealed and we've cross appealed. So
Okay,
those are
that's
both
fine.
in the appellate court. And then LAFCO issues were subject to the demurrer in the acquisition.
yeah, okay, that's,
And the demurrer was rejected, but some of those issues are likely to reappear in
a hearing or something.
in a motion for
Okay,
stipulated judgment, possibly.
I'm clear. Putting it out to the public, you know, I know it's a lot to do with LAFCO, so thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
And that concludes the report.
Thank you for that. And we'll look forward to next month. Get another update on one of the cases for sure. Okay, item number 5, reports from any of the commissioners on activities or committees or other meetings they've attended and comments they want to add.
About this one. Item
Any
number
member,
5.
any member of the board have a comment or something to add? I have one thing, which I just want to call attention to an article in yesterday's Herald,
Yeah.
Responsible Water Management. It's big headlines and big storyline and big prominent place in the paper. The author was the Director of Engineering for Cal-Am Water. So I don't have anything to say about it except call attention to it. It's in the news and it's written, it's Cal-Am and consider the source. My only comment.
To the chair, General Manager, did you read that article?
Yes, I did.
Are we gonna answer that article if we can, or do we want to leave it alone? I heard about the article this morning, so that, and I'm glad the chair brought it up, so I just want to know.
My inbox was torched, was screaming over the weekend with requests for rebuttal. You know, the news cycle's a little fast. I'm not sure it's going to be relevant in a few days. But there are statements made that we've refuted in testimony that the thrust of the article is that the quality of their numbers and the need for how much supply and how much demand there's really going to be is strongly rooted in fact. And I can tell you that it's strongly rooted in their version of the facts. There are 5 interveners in the phase 2 proceeding who have a different set of facts. I think it's just defending a position that they've already defended, but defending it once again.
Okay, thank you.
Well, just as an extension of that thought process, I'd like the outreach committee to kind of discuss how and if it's significant to, you know, maybe there's a response, maybe there's a way to, counterpunch,
Yeah.
Articles like this, but maybe bringing Bob out of the closet and putting them in front of the public again.
I just heard about it this morning and people want to know what we're gonna do, so.
Yeah, okay. Well, okay, the nature of these comments are not to direct policy or direct the GM in any way, but express an opinion and a point of view without extensive discussion at all. Okay, public hearings. It's time for consider adoption of the annual budget, annual plan, sorry.
Annual report. Yes, and you have a copy of it in your packet. Just a couple of things to highlight. There was one number on the 3rd page in the right-hand column that was missing a digit, which has subsequently been corrected. And there were some headings in the financial section that I think what you'll see will be that a couple of the paragraphs will get broken up because that section's not all about the GFOA award for financial transparency and reporting. like the negotiation with the labor unions and the settlement with the lawsuit and the water supply charge. Those will be kind of called out separately. Other than that, if you have kind of overarching comments, we should talk about them here. If you've got minor comments, just send them to me via email and we'll go ahead and attack them. It's a similar look to last year. This will be a trifold, a single page heavy stock trifold. So where you see 6 pages now, it'll be page 1 will be the cover page, open it up, page 2, 3, 4, fold it back up, page 5, page 6. I've included the budget for inclusion in the weekly with a print run, the same as what we did last year. And the weekly is also offered for an additional $1,800 a year to make it available on their website with a call to attention on a quarterly basis. And that might be worth trying out for a year to see what we think.
I want to make sure I understand that. $1,800 a year, they'll put it on their website, feature access to it on their website.
Correct.
So
it'll be on our website and anybody who wants to
Yeah.
go can find it. But the weekly on a quarterly basis, we'll do a little renewal blurb somewhere. Won't be big, but it'll just call people's attention to some of these reports that have been submitted. So I don't know if you saw the Meals on Wheels summary in maybe 2 weeklies ago.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that they're going to renew that one on a quarterly basis and just draw the reader's attention to it as a
Yes.
reminder.
Not little teeny thing. I mean, it was like a
Yeah, it was like almost like our,
quarter page.
yeah, what they had an insert, a glossy insert. Yeah, an annual report style document.
But that's not what this $1,800 is about.
No, but then they'll take the PDF version
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Chair. Okay. An extra 1,800 to the Coast Weekly. It sounds fair, but Carmel Pine Cone. Now, I like for them to get some of this action if we can, because I believe the 5th District out there in Carmel Valley will benefit from it and get a report.
Yeah, when public outreach talked about it last year, and it's a very good point. We did get a budget for it last year. And the pine cone's great, would love Paul Miller and Kelly Nix and Mary Schley and Chris Counts,
Right.
good people. But we felt that it was duplicate because their area is covered also by the weekly.
Well,
So-
some may get the weekly and some may get the pine cone.
Yeah.
I look at both of them, see how bad they're treating us. But some look at the pine cone because that's their local and the weekly is the county. So what can we do for them?
Well, they can do it. They, as I said, they made a bid last year, and we can go get it updated.
Okay.
If that's the general direction. We're going to have to go to print soon.
Right.
Is it bad timing to have the outreach committee just kind of discuss this again? Because I think they were interested in both originally, but they passed on 1 year, but now we're in our 2nd year.
Right.
Do we want to take a pass the 2nd year?
Yeah.
I think that's the question.
I just like to see how it would go with them out there if they're going to do more than the Coast Weekly or vice versa. And then we'll find out on the next one and we can cut it down if we have to or whatever. and
Yeah.
Doesn't
Either
the,
check out the 1,800 or whatever. So,
excuse me, doesn't the weekly have a larger distribution?
yeah, but everybody don't look at the weekly. And when the pine cone comes out on Thursday, I go through it to make sure my name is not in it. So, You know, I look at both of them, and some people look at one or the other. So
It's more expensive.
I just feel that we should cover.
No, I think it's a great statement. I'm pretty sure we didn't budget for it, but
Seems like it was another $6,000 or $7,000.
it was more than that. Yeah.
It's pricier.
Well, yes,
Just look at it. That's all I can ask.
yeah, Kate.
I have a couple questions, but the first and foremost is, as somebody who spends time hanging out by the river, in the river, how concerned should people be about the rebounding Pacific lampreys? That's something that is dangerous. Is it harmless?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not like an electric eel, or anything like that, but they're not a particularly attractive fish. I mean, it's just, and that's being
Kind.
very kind.
Generous.
Yeah. But they have really resurged as they figured out how to pass the old San Clemente, reroute, and they are thriving. They're not a food fish, so they didn't get a whole lot of attention, and they're not threatened, so they don't get any love. And but they're thriving pretty well. I mean, their numbers are up. I don't know if any of my fish folks want to weigh in, but there's Thomas.
Yeah, hi, this is Thomas. Yeah, I've never heard of any problems with lamprey being aggressive or causing problems for swimmers. So I think it's one of these things that they are probably more spooked by us. And so yeah, but I will research that a little deeper as well.
Oh, it's
Never
all
heard
good.
of anything.
I haven't seen one yet, but that's great to hear. Rebounding.
But I think they have a bad reputation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
they're known by their reputation, not so much what they've done.
Yeah, yeah. I do have a real question. And that is, in regards to the conversation we had earlier, I'm just going to throw this out there. The one sentence, that's on page 35, and whether or not the sentence is strong enough to say the Pure Water Monterey expansion will bring a replacement water supply to meet the peninsula's needs for decades, or act as a bridge until a desalination plant is fully permitted and built. And I only say this because I did ask the Water Resources Agency as a member of that board, you had a concern with the ordinance. Do you have a concern with something that's in a document like this? Because they are two different places. The ordinance is a more, you can describe it however you would describe it. But
I'm running out of 20s, but
here's your second.
Director Edwards already raised this point.
Well, I wasn't gonna say
this evening.
because you try to be politically correct about it by putting both ways in there. So I wasn't gonna say nothing, but it came up.
Well, the reason I bring it up, one is just, it's an opportunity to sort of clarify also what I mentioned last time, which is I believe that we have this water for as long as we need it. I don't foresee there's any projects on the horizon that would be using that water. And I think it's safe to say that we have it for decades, like it says in that sentence. But the concern that was brought up to the Board of Supervisors, and I'm a member of the Board of Supervisors, was that it's for the length of the source water agreement, not in perpetuity, and it could be used at some future date for something else. And so it's not an appropriate word.
Yeah, I think
describing the source.
I think the conclusion before was nothing is permanent, and we should just strike the word permanent. So I'm happy to do so in the annual report.
Well, I think just to be clear, through the chair, the word permanent was inappropriate to the Water Resources Agency in that letter because it's their water that they have an agreement and are allowing to be used for Pure Water Monterey expansion. And so that's why it was requested. that it doesn't be put in a document and say permanent, because there could be a future where it's used for something else. And so that's why I think the issue with the permanent word was brought up. I mean, I'm not going to go to bat for it in a document like this. This is a beautiful glossy that's very informative and will be helpful, but it is something that when I asked the Water Resources Agency, would you have the same concern with it in a document like this? They said it would be much better not to have it there. And the sentence reads beautifully and indicates that you will be able to rely on this water for a long time.
Well, I don't have a problem with taking the word permanent out because it's consistent with the resolution that we adopted going forward also. Also, I don't think it's smart to just being, flicking somebody in the ear when you just
Yeah, appreciate that.
can, but you don't need to. So
We need a different type of flicking, if you will, because we have to put the source water discussion to rest. There's a lot of misperception out there that just keeps getting replayed over and over. So I'll be working with Monterey One Water to try to get it distilled down in an understandable format. And that'll be a better place to deal with this. So.
Now, with the word permanent, to me, it seemed like it's the way it's written in here, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, he got it both ways. I do not see the expansion being shut down once we build it.
No, I don't.
Right.
I don't see it. And here it's basically saying until Cal-Am get his desal plant permitted or whatever. When is that going to be? We don't know. So I like the way it is in here with the word permanent. I liked it before in the ordinance with the word permanent, but y'all trying to make peace around here. So, whatever is best, because he tried to do it both ways. And I brought that up to him. So I like the way he did it in here.
I have a suggestion.
I have a suggestion too. Go ahead, Kate.
Well, so in light of what Director Edwards is saying, the Pure Water Monterey expansion project will bring a permanent replacement water supply. It doesn't rely on the source water only coming from the Water Resources Agency, rec ditch, the whole outline. It's the project. And it would be, it would be incumbent upon the district to always be looking for source waters for that project.
Correct. And I think that's where some of the dissonance that we're having over this comes from, because we don't envision that the project will ever not have available water to produce 5,750 acre feet. But we really semantically do not need the word permanent in there.
I'd suggest long-term in place of permanent. I mean, you're still making the point, and it's just a question of one word hanging us up. It hung us up the last meeting. It hung us up with a significant agency, a water agency in the county. We don't need the headaches that might come from that. And so, what does it do? Poke the bear. I mean, even though we know what we're doing and we feel very confident what we're doing, and I think everything we're doing is working out. I mean, so all of that is plus for us, but I don't think you still need to just poke the bear. Not that they're in charge of anything that we do, because we are. But just taking some of the dialogue, just like give the dialogue a rest.
I had it covered, so I was
May
wondering.
I add something
No, I'm sorry.
through the chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to underscore. Yeah, I just want to underscore a point that Dave just made about there are multiple sources. Some are available at different times, for the project. And I think that is a source of confusion, that if you're thinking, well, one source could be interrupted or another source is variable depending on, number of factors. But when you look at all of the sources, available. Even if some are not available, others will be available. So basically that's the assessment has been made that if taken as a whole, there is sufficient water, even if one or another is interrupted or discontinued. And is that a correct summary, Dave?
Yes, Karen, there's 14 different sources of supply, and then there's the if at the end of the current agreement, the parties didn't want to re-enter into a similar agreement, then there's all the peninsula wastewater that's currently dedicated for other purposes in the summertime that can come back. And so there are alternate future sources of supply as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important fact too. Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't think it's necessary to stress too much over the word, can have permanent or not. I think it's wiser to, just say long-term and reliable and, and, it's not necessary to worry about it too much, in my view.
Any other board member has a comment? Thank you, Karen.
I do have Michael
Well,
Bear has.
we'll do it in room. Anybody here that would like to come make a public comment on this? Okay.
I think long-term is a good idea.
I like long term.
Let's go out to the public, Michael Bear.
Speaking of poking the bear.
Nah,
Yeah, you're not poking the bear. And yeah, I think long-term and reliable are both, and it's great. And yeah, and it avoids any hassles with other parts of the county. I just have a question. I was looking over, it's a very beautiful document, but I was reading on page 2, where on the right-hand side, it says surplus rain results in record injection into the Seaside Basin. That's the page. And then there's 3 paragraphs underneath that. And in the 3rd paragraph, it says the water supply includes 3,355 acre feet from pure water, 3,829 acre feet from the Carmel River, which confounded me because that exceeds the amount that you're allowed, right? Isn't it 3,300 and something? How is it that you can get 3,829 acre feet from the Carmel River? That's seems like an error to me, but I just thought I would point that out and ask that question.
That's something that needs to go back to staff to.
No,
the numbers.
it's a combination of the base Carmel River right, the 3376, which wasn't completely maxed out. We had a very good table 13 year last year, several hundred acre feet. And then there's what's called the Malpaso water right, which were just under 100 acre feet, about 86 acre feet. And so the combination of all of those 3 are sources from the river. So it's not just the base water right.
Did you hear that, Michael? Anyway, thanks for the record, clarifying the number, all from the Carmel River. All those sources of water were from the Carmel River. Okay,
Chair Riley, I do have another member of the public with their hand raised.
go ahead.
It's on the telephone. Caller, when you're ready, you may introduce yourself if you like.
Good evening, Margaret Ann Coppernoll. Yes, this is a beautiful annual report. I just had a question about the paragraph you were previously discussing about the groundwater for lifting the CDO. I was curious about the end of the sentence that said, or act as a bridge until a desalination plant is fully permitted and built. And of course, my hair stood on end because I know we've been fighting against that so much, along with the eminent domain buyout going on. So I was wondering, is that just a political statement in there, or what is the rationale?
You want to comment?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We're trying very hard to be agnostic. Well, let me say, we're trying to separate the yes on desal, no on desal argument from the CDO. Because the CDO, and you can believe in either set of facts, that the Pure Water Monterey expansion provides all the water that's needed for 30 years, or it's less than 30 years and you're going to need a desal plant sooner. Those two arguments don't need to be resolved in order to lift the cease and desist order, because the cease and desist order is about trespass. And as I've previously shared with the board, when the expansion comes online, the company, the Cal-Am on the Carmel River, will not have been in trespass for 4 years. And the way the water code reads is it's existing or threatened trespass, which opens the door for the potential of trespassing in the future. So they could keep a cease and desist order in place if there was a high likelihood that you're going to trespass in the future. And our argument to them is going to be, whether you think a desal plant is needed 10 years from now or not, there's more than enough surplus water in the expansion project to get you through those next 10 years. And so if you're not in trespass for 4 and you're not going to be in trespass for the foreseeable future, then what basis under law is there to keep you under a cease and desist order? And that's really the matter. So we're trying to appeal to believers of both sets of facts. And but you don't have to reach the conclusion on which it is, because it's enough to not be in violation for a lengthy enough period of time that there's no crime being committed and there's no likelihood of that crime being committed in the near term. So it appeals to some, and exactly for the same reason it aggravates others. And so we're not trying to stake out a position other than, you don't have to decide. But the important thing is we need to build housing, we need to do job creation, and you can't do any of that if you can't set meters for large scale projects. So we've got to get the cease and desist order lifted, especially if you're a believer in the need for a desal plant. Everything you've heard about it coming online in 2.5 to 3 years is false. The conditions will not all have been met. A couple of the conditions cannot be met in the time frame that have been espoused out there. So even if the conditions are going to be met, you're probably best case 5 to 6, possibly 7 years away. So it's not a world in which we need to live on the peninsula any longer, waiting for a cease and desist order to be lifted in 7 more years or 6 more years. We've got to start building things now.
You have a comment over here.
Yeah, I have a comment on Michael Bear's sharp-eyed notice of the 3829. I think that should be said 33, was it 3376? Is that right? From the Carmel River, and small amount from, nobody's going to know what table 13 in El Paso are.
That's why they were lumped into the Carmel River.
From
Yeah.
other sources.
Yeah.
Just something like other sources. Too small, historic sources, something.
Well, yeah, I want to add a comment as well too, but I don't think the annual report is the place where we expect to explain everything that the district is doing, particularly when a lot of things are up in the air with lawsuits and so on, litigation, dates in the future and so on. Even the political kind of irritation that we may have on some issues and so on, you don't address those here either, but you also don't poke the bear necessarily. But I'm just thinking I think we're having too much of a focus on too much detail, too much attention to the need for detail in the annual report. I don't think it's necessary. I think some of our committees and maybe the continued work of the board and then the staff are going to take up these issues as they evolve. But I'm a little reluctant to keep discussing changes to the annual report. That's just my opinion. But are there any other Thoughts?
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think the first statement that says, the important statement here is a total production of 8972 acre feet of drinking water for the year, the lowest demand since 1957. That to me is the big point, whatever the others come from, and that you could just say water supply sources included, pure water Monterey, or just list them.
Yeah, some of these,
Fine.
and when you get into the conservation sections, you see some numbers that are, let's just agree that they're kind of boring. We're trying to strike a balance between what we've traditionally offered. So we have a requirement for an annual report. We have traditionally offered up some of these really boring numbers. But we also have traditionally said where the supplies came from and how much. Most people don't care, but some people do. So it's, it's an attempt to meet all of the requirements as well as just putting information out there in case people. The good part of this report is it shows the breadth of the things we do, which is takeaway number one. But some of the data and the fine tuning of it maybe isn't needed. But
Maybe
some
you could
people
put-
have
maybe you could
liked
put
that.
percentages instead of numbers, and that way it's still an estimate of the volumes that are coming from different sources, and just leave the numbers out. I mean, it's a couple of things.
Or at least do the 3376, because people know that
Yeah.
number.
We'll go back to the audience.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, Tom Raleigh, Vice President of MPTA. I think some of the comments made by Mr. Stolt are out of order, predicting on when the desal plant's going to be completed. I mean, you know a lot about water, but I don't think you know all the facts about desal. Anyway, I think that your comment about keeping it more generalized makes a lot of sense in the annual report. And the 3376 figure is probably one you can hang your hat on. But we are not back up to speed on tourism. We are still way below the 2019 numbers on the number of tourists coming here. Guess where our biggest allocation of water is for? And the hotels is for tourists. And that's why we're not up to speed. That's why we're below the usage. It's so obvious, it hits you over the head like a ball peen hammer. So, don't count if we ever do get an economy revived where our tourism revives, we're going to see water consumption go up significantly. And counting on that not to happen is not something you should plan on. You should plan on, hopefully, the economy reviving and our tourism counts going up to where they were at least in 2019 and perhaps higher. And we have some big hotels coming online that are going to various places. Some are only Marina Coast Water District and not the Cal-Am district. But these are going to be big demands, and the apartment that are being built on Garden Road and what's being proposed in Tarpey Flats will blow your mind away as far as the number on the builder's remedy, because the county doesn't have its county housing element.
Great.
So there's a lot of things that are going to add to need for water in the future. So I think you need to be aware of those as a water board, that these are coming down the line. So please.
I'd like to move the item along. Yes, Kate?
I know you want to move the item along, but I just have one question because it came up. And where does the Malpaso water come from? Because I never would have associated it with the Carmel River before tonight. And so since that came up, I think of it in my mind, I've always thought of the allocation. It's not direct, it's sort of a historic water supply that's on paper. But when someone actually cashes that paper in,
Right.
where does it come from?
So there was subdivision map filed for the Odello East property. So you go over the Carmel River on Highway 1, and to your left on the east side, where the little red buildings are,
Great, great.
where the floodplain at Carmel River Free project's going to be. There was a permitted well and a associated water right.
Yeah.
And it was formalized, and it's a year-round right. And Alan Williams and the developers at Carmel Development Corp. Filed with the state to change the place of diversion. And originally they were going to make it all of the Carmel River wells, and the state said, we would appreciate you identifying a single well and a new well. And so there is now what we call the Eastwood well, but it's a well that was put in place kind of in the Rancho Cañada well area, in the portion of Rancho Cañada that will never be developed. And so that Eastwood well is used just like any other Cal-Am well to pull water out of the ground. And it is Carmel River water that was that water right. And it was actually a perfected water right. And what I mean by that is there's a level where you have a water right that, oh gosh, John, if you can bail me out what the term is, but it's, you know what I'm angling for?
Right.
A license.
You get a permit and then you perfect your water right and it becomes licensed.
Yeah.
License.
So it actually got to that point of license, but it's Carmel River water. And
But not to belabor it, I just want to say that in light of what was brought up earlier, it's outside the cease and desist orders.
correct.
Water right for the Carmel River, which is the 3376. So I would just support somehow separating that.
Yeah, we've
Call it
already
the
gone into
Eastwood well
rewrite
and
based
pass
on the set of comments.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't even realize as much as you just shared, which was very informative. Thank you. But
And the thing that's difficult for people to understand too is that they'll say things like, well, that's separate. It's actually a home in the unincorporated county and a little bit of Carmel that gets built. It's served with a Cal-Am meter. It's a Cal-Am bill. It's Cal-Am demand.
it's a well now, I learned.
And there is a well that Cal-Am operates. And so you put it in on the supply side because it's serving demand on the demand side, and it's a Cal-Am demand. And so but it's an incremental piece of supply that Cal-Am themselves didn't develop. And that's kind of how we view the Sand City desal plant as well.
Okay, that's
Similar.
so helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
I move that we change the permanent to long term and the other changes that been incorporated and approve the report, the annual report.
Let's have a second.
Second.
Thank you.
All right. No more discussion. Roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul.
Yes, and with my thanks to Phil Wellman, because I think it looks really good. I like the way it's done.
Chair Riley.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Motion passes.
Yes.
Good. It's nothing like healthy discussions, as long as we can still make progress. Okay. We're going to next item, which is item number 7, the adoption of the quarterly water budget.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Riley, members of the board. This is a public hearing, item number 7, and we have a prepared presentation for it, which I will talk off of. But while it's coming up, I'll use this opportunity. Some of you on the board I've known for quite a while, and some of you are new, and I may be new to you. And so I'm the Water Resources Division Manager at the district, and we do the quarterly water budget, as well as my team operates the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project, injecting the Carmel River water. So any questions you may have on those areas, I will be able to hopefully answer them.
Yeah, John, just a second.
Sarah.
Okay, we're good to go.
Thank you. This is for the quarterly water budget for the 3 months that are April, May, and June, 2025. It's the third quarter of the water year 2025 water budget. We meet obviously a month prior and decide on it. As Dave said, it's ourselves, Cal-Am, both the state and federal fisheries groups, as well as the Water Resources Control Board and the water rights. And we all meet to make sure that we're following this litany of state board orders that have been written on how to produce water out of the Carmel Valley, as well as some district rules which talk about targets for the natural sources of the system and trigger rationings if we're going over those. So we need to meet with the group and understand how all of those rules apply. And as Dave said, those constraints, legal constraints, as well as physical constraints to produce water for, make sure we have water for all the water projects, and make sure that we're producing water out of the system in the most environmentally responsible way, but as well as getting the supply that the region needs. So this water year, this quarter, we're obviously within the ASR operations window. We will be in the window through the end of May should the flow stay up, as Dave was saying. So if we get a little bit more rain, if all we need to keep it going is, if we're looking on the 10-day forecast, seeing an inch or so of rain on the 10-day forecast, that will keep the river up enough within the flow thresholds we need. And we'll be able to divert underneath our ASR permits. Physical limitation, as Dave said, of about 13 acre-feet per day through operation of ASR 1 and 2. The table 13s we talked about a little bit. It is flow driven as well when it can be diverted, and the demand of the Carmel Valley area, as well as the Carmel area where this table 13 water is able to be used, it averages about 3.25 acre-feet per day. So we use that as a proxy when we're going into the quarterly water budget. And the third thing that's going on project operation wise during this quarter is Pure Water Monterey operations. So we will continue to recover at the rate of 315 acre-feet for April and May, and then we'll move into what's called building of the operational yield. The operational yield is a amount of water that the district purchases, leaves in the ground should there be a plant failure. Then you can recover the operational yield that has been stored in the ground so that Pure Water Monterey can be an uninterruptible source. So we'll go into building that operational yield up the last month of this water quarter. And Cal-Am has a balance of about 100 acre-feet that they have purchased and not recovered. So they will move into recovering that in June. So next slide, please, Sarah. So we come into it as well as with all the rules and the constraints of the system with some philosophies. So we want to try to use up all of the Seaside Coastal Basins sub area, as has been stated. Pumping the native water is a more cheaper source of water. So we want to make sure we use all that. We're going to be assuming that ASR is injecting should we meet our thresholds, as well as diverting table 13 should we meet our thresholds. And we are going to be watching, as was discussed earlier in this meeting, the recovery of the 3376 with the goal of moving through this quarter and next quarter and again to recovering that. And so the group met on March 5th, which again is us, Cal-Am, Department of Fish and Wildlife, United States Wildlife and of the National Marine Fisheries Service, and State Water Resources Control Board. So if we go to the next slide, we also look at what we think precipitation is going to be. And so we go to, at least these are available still now from NOAA. It shows in our area, we have equal chances. As Dave was saying earlier, we're kind of in starting the water year in a below normal state, but looking at equal chances of rain, we might get, as he said, up into maybe a below normal or a normal water year, which would give us some an ASR injection coming through, not all the way to the end of the water year, like we've seen in wet water years, but usually in a normal water year, we may see injection through the first 2 months of this quarter. So we go to the next slide, we can see what that looks like. So I'll walk through this a little bit for the benefit of some of the directors that may not have looked at this. We break it down by month, of course, across the top. And then as we come down the sheet, we break it into sources of water. So the Upper Carmel Valley can produce water out of the upper subunits, which is basically defined at the Don Juan Bridge at Garland Park. Above it is upper subunits, below it is the lower subunits. We know how much these wells can produce, and we know how much we'll be moving into need for the demand. And then we also add a line item in there for ASR diversions. So we want to make sure, should we be able to divert ASR waters as permitted by our permits, we know we have the well capacity to meet this. And so we're moving in estimating that probably water year will have some injection in April, likely not in May with the type of water year we're having. So we see the ASR diversion line item go away in May. So then that way we can come down in total. We think we need to be able to get 390 acre feet out of the river from all well sources in April, 310 in May, and 340 in June to supply the community and to supply water for the different water rights and the different water projects. Then if you move down, we go into the Seaside Groundwater Basin, which can produce native water from the coastal sub areas. You can recover aquifer storage and recovery water from the Carmel River, and you can recover water from Pure Water Monterey, which was kind of what we had talked about earlier. And it's showing us building up the operational reserve as well as CalAm moving towards with an effort to recover the remainder of the balance that they have in the ground. And then when we move to the very bottom columns or rows of the chart, we see that in April, we think we're going to need 880 acre feet of water to supply the demand of the system and to supply water to all the water rights and water projects. And move to May 750 and June 750. And these are based on historic percentages and demand levels that we've been tracking in the system. And so I pause here on this slide and I can answer any questions on this slide.
Questions from the board? Okay, proceed, Jonathan.
Okay, great. So what we're looking at is, as Dave said earlier, that the satellite system, Hidden Hills, is still not hooked into the main system. So we are going to see some overproduction in that area as through the mechanism of the seaside adjudication, the allocation for the Laguna Seca area has fallen to 0, which is one altogether, or they need to be hooked together. And eventually, we'd already discussed kind of the timing of that, but we should expect some overages there. And then the demand numbers were based on kind of this bracketed that we're showing here of these percentages of what we've seen of total system demand. So that's what we're basing our estimates on. And we can go to the next slide. And the staff recommendation would be to have the board adopt this proposed draft quarterly water budget. And then because the district is the CEQA entity, we will file the correct CEQA paperwork with the county and should the district approve this. And that is concludes my presentation.
Thank you, John. And for the additional information on the satellite systems too, which we normally don't get. So thank you for that. If there are no questions from the board, I'll take it out to the public. Tom, you got up earlier. I don't know whether you were okay. Okay. Anybody on Zoom?
I see no raised hands.
Okay, well, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the water budget.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Daniels?
Yes.
Director Edwards?
Yes.
Director Lindor?
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Chair Riley.
Yes.
Motion is adopted 6-0.
Thank you. Okay, next is item number 8, action item,
Thank you.
legal services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, I think, adequately well described in the staff report. I want to point out that Shoot Mahali serves the district in 2 functions. One is as primary attorney on the LAFCO litigation, and as assisting attorney, part of the team of special counsel for LAFCO related issues in the acquisition eminent domain trial. And we've exhausted their budget. The request is that you both authorize additional work going forward, which would include work related to the appeal and work related to the eminent domain case, and a budget of $100,000. It says in the staff report for the remainder of the fiscal year, but anything unexpended we would expect to carry over for the following budget year.
They've been a terrific help, I think.
Yeah, if you recall in some of the calls, this is Edward Schexnader primarily, among others.
Yeah, I've seen him in action as well as the big boss from your firm. Any questions or comments from the board? Go out to the public again, either way.
just-
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen, I see you now.
I'd just like to say from what I've seen, they've done very good work for us.
Yeah, thank you for that. Nobody with their hands up?
Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the additional budget for lawyer assistance.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
yes,
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Chair Riley.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next is item number 9, the adoption of strategic goals. We had our discussion process recently, and this is the result. You want to give a little report, Dave?
We recently had our workshop and this is the result. No, it was a very collegial half a day with obvious outcomes related to our first, second, and frankly, the third goal area, but the first and second goals, and I want to touch on first. Goal number 1 is to continue planning and implementation for protecting and increasing water supply. And within that are several objectives, the primary of which is attempting to lift the cease and desist order this year. Obviously bring the pure water expansion online as well. Goal area 2, there was some wordsmithing suggested by Director Paul. And then I found her handwritten note from the meeting, which was even slightly different than the way it's written here, but implement public ownership of Monterey water system as directed by the voters. So 1 and 2 remain our primary area of interest. Goal area 3 is new, focus on seaside groundwater basin management. And this derives both from our participation as a water master member, as well as our directors attending on the board meeting level or the board level. And a lot of the recent discussion about sources of revenue, need for protective water levels, leakage, and a variety of other issues, one of which is still on our agenda tonight as a discussion item. And as those issues become more and more discussed at the water master level, I think it's important that we share with them our knowledge and learnings separate from the water master. And so we're focused on that as a near-term goal and objective. And then moving forward, continued public engagement on water issues is a bit of a, we can't really survive and do our work without doing that every year. But I think it's really important to remain kind of in the front of mind. And then protect, enhance, and maintain the district's financial health. And obviously, as we look at the legal settlement that we had this recent year, the focus on potential setbacks and legal fees for the acquisition, continuing our focus on revenue forecasting and reserve levels will remain very important. And then we've added a longer term goal, which is review Carmel River mitigation program. And this was talked about a little bit last year, but is becoming more important now because the situation we've already discussed, that the trespass on the river is no longer happening and is likely not to continue to happen, which means the mitigation program on the river that was related to extractions from the river needs to be rethought. Obviously, I think I was quoted saying the river was dealt a bad hand. It is. It's an over-tapped river. There's too many people living on it, and there's too many extractions of water. But it's not just Cal-Am's extractions that are causing tributaries to dry up when or to not reconnect to the river until the middle of winter, as Potrero Creek happened this year. I think as recently as 3 weeks ago, it still wasn't flowing into the Carmel. Now it's rollicking. I went out and saw it over the weekend. But we need to rethink what role the district will continue to maintain and what kind of monitoring and so forth will be needed to get there. So we need to develop a roadmap for how we rethink the mitigation program. And you can't just stop mitigations that were required under an EIR because you feel like it. There are, along the way, you can, due to change conditions, curtail perhaps one or two or items of a mitigation program. But you can't just say we're not mitigating any longer because there's no trespass. You're going to have findings. You're going to have to determine that everything that you found before has been ameliorated or can't be ameliorated or is not affected by the mitigation program. And so we need to put ourselves in a position to do that. And that's going to take a couple of years at least. But that's where we're headed. So I think these are really good high level goals. I did share with you, as I do share with my division managers, there are day-to-day functional goals that are kind of separate from the guidance that you provided through the workshop that give us more than enough to focus on around here. So with that, I would encourage that you adopt these goals and objectives for the current year.
I just want to comment on the process. I was just very, very pleased with the turnout. Well, not exactly pleased with the turnout because there were some people missing, but the interaction was really at a high level. I thought, as much as we've deal with a lot of things at meetings like this, which doesn't seem to be high level, it's day to day and it's operational and it's important. But I think setting goals is also very important. I just thought it was a very productive, very strong, interactive, and I thought we were carving out some new ground. I think as a reality check on where we stand and where we think where we want to go. And so I just think these goals are a little. I think they're substantially different from last year, but reflect, I think, a reality of the issues that will face us going forward. And what we need to kind of be focused on. So I was just real pleased with the process. I'm pleased with the tight language that's used here. I only had one question, which I don't even remember if we talked about it, but the Los Patros Dam, would that fall into goal number 6 at some point in the Carmel River?
Yeah, I would say yes.
Supply and Carmel River, I don't know.
Yeah, and we talked briefly about it. So Los Padres Dam is heading into another phase related to feasibility. So it's not water supply at this point, although that was one of the alternatives looked at, but it's definitely going to be mitigation related. But for now, yeah, I'd say it's more of a continuation of the prior goal, which was, get that Los Padres Dam and Reservoir study completed and done and wrapped and packed. And we did. And then the next study came out, and the county also has an interest in kind of updating the flood study. And they got money set aside through the budget at the state level for that. And so we're participating in that and some of the work that's being done by AECOM in this new component study. There's actually 4 pieces going on Los Padres
Let's not get
Dam.
into
So,
details.
it's kind of a part of this, but not really on its own.
Okay, and it
Yeah.
has a different time frame too. I
Yeah.
gather.
More than 3 years.
Yeah. More than 3 years. Any other comments from the board member?
I would just say, as one of those persons that could not be at that meeting, I enjoyed reading this, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I thought, wow, this is, it's very clear. And I did see also what George mentioned. There's a little bit, different little shifting in this year's, in the details and in the goals. Yeah, we got some work to do.
And I'd like to see clarification for each of the committees that are on the board and where they fit into each of these goals. I think that for instance, the public outreach committee can really focus on goal number 4 and so on and so forth, the finance committee. And if you get them working in conjunction with the board or with the water management district, you have this wonderful flow of meeting our goals.
Yeah, good idea.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Yes, Kate?
I just wanted to say that I was also one of the folks that wasn't able to make it. And so thank you for doing all of this work. Looks like it was about time well spent.
Be proud of us, hopefully. Any comment from the public? Any comment from Zoom?
Yes, we have Susan Schiavone. Susan, when you're ready.
Good evening, board and staff, general manager. I just want to say, hey, this is great. This is a really good addition to your goal setting. I'm really happy that you're emphasizing the purchase of the water system, which is key in my mind. And also the fact that you're getting more involved with the Seaside Water Master group, which I really think could very much benefit from your expertise and more input from the district's experience. And I'd like to see that happen definitely regularly. And I also am happy to see that you are concerned about mitigation, even if you get the CDO lifted. It's a precious resource, that river. And I know you are responsible stewards, and you will continue that as you go forward. And congratulations on all this hard work you've done and continue to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I believe we have Margaret Ann Coppernoll when you're ready.
Good evening. I just wanted to say what a phenomenal job you are doing. And I know the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into this hard work, and it was paying off big time. Just for example, I think it was 500 million gallons or into the injection into the storage of the rainwater, which is fantastic. So congratulations on all the good work you're doing. And thank you very much from the public out here, because we know what you're doing such a great job that I don't think any of us could ever come up to those standards that you have, and your goals are wonderful. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for all that you're doing. And I want you to know how much you are appreciated out here. So God bless you and thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Riley, I see no other raised hands.
Okay, back to the board. Any other comments, or entertain a motion to adopt the strategic planning goals and objectives?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Chair Riley.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Next item is number 10, action item, to repeal ordinance, 152. The famous.
Ordinance 152. And this was discussed in brief during the workshop, but not everyone was in attendance or had the chance to comment. I included section 13 of the ordinance 152, which is the section about modification to the ordinance. If we were to keep the charge in place and come back at some point and want to increase it for whatever reason, it would be subject to a Prop 218 majority protest hearing process. But the board would not have to follow that process under 3 events, and that's kind of in the middle of this paragraph of this section, which is to temporarily suspend the supply charge, to reduce the rate of the supply charge, or to repeal the ordinance in its entirety. I would like general direction of the board to learn how you want us to proceed. I think at that first conversation, there was an appetite for repealing the entire ordinance. And then if we were to revisit a similar type of charge, to come back with a completely new ordinance at that time. We have also talked about suspension of utilizing anything like a water supply charge for a short period of time, if necessary, as part of any legal settlement of the case. That was direction provided. And so where we're at right now is just if you, as a group, want to repeal, then we will start work on an ordinance to affect the repeal. Otherwise, during the budget time, you could suspend, or obviously reduce is not an option right now with the current court opinion.
Well, I just want to comment that at the goals workshop, there was a pretty serious discussion about where are we headed in general, but also what our financial picture looks like in the short term and the long term. We kind of discussed the continuation of 152 committee and thought, let's just close the books on that one. Let's get a better understanding of what our financial needs may be in the future. If we need to go forward with a 218 process again, it will be a subject to another discussion and kind of fitting the priorities that we may arrive at, may determine. But for now, let's just get the 152 off the books. And even if there's a committee structure that is kind of interesting, or maybe not, whatever, that can evolve too from the goals workshop we were talking about. Maybe there's some value in a citizens committee, maybe not. And that would still have to be some discussion about that. But we have the choice going forward about what we want to do, and our hands are not tied in any way if we repeal this ordinance, because we're starting with a clean slate. So I would just urge that we adopt this, cancel whatever the action is to terminate ordinance 152, or start the process as terminating 152.
Correction.
I think
Now you'd be providing direction to pursue a path forward.
Okay, I'm going to ask tell me the language. Thank you.
Yeah, we just need general direction.
Okay.
In order to repeal, I think what you're suggesting, George, is that we repeal ordinance 152 rather than the other option.
Right. Start with the repeal of 152, and then whatever comes after that will evolve. And then we have time to discuss options going forward. So yes, so the discussion here is direction for the general manager, particularly those who maybe were not at the goals workshop. If you have any questions and so on, please ask. But anyway,
I have a question.
Yes.
You in your remarks, you were saying something about a committee. What were you referring to?
Well, let me jump in on that one. So back on the last topic, the strategic goals, in goal area number 4, one of the objectives is consider forming a citizens panel. So one of the takeaways I got through that discussion was there was some benefit to the community to have when ordinance 152 citizens advisory panel would meet. And Director Lindor at least had one meeting as a member of that panel before we suspended it due to the lawsuit. It's also some water interested parties on both sides of the proverbial aisle that come together and kind of hear what's going on. And while some of the focus of that panel was the actual numbers related to receipts and expenditures of the water supply charge, there was what I call the water gossip section where we talked about supply and demand and projects and everything else going on in water. And a number of those panel members would take that back to their communities. And it was just another way to get word out, but it was also a mechanism for getting input as well. And so to the extent there's some value both ways where the members get something out of it and we get something out of it, it might be worthwhile forming just a advisory panel or whatever will end up calling it.
That's to be determined.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
For no other questions, we'll go out to the group. We'll hear from Tom.
Yeah, good evening again. Tom Raleigh, representing MPTA. I'm glad to see that you're considering repeal of this. Because right now, the ordinance 152 leaves a bad taste in a lot of your citizens' mouths. There's a lot of stakeholder organizations that are overlooked, and you've run roughshod over them. We've been there. I've been here watching what you're doing every month. But I have a limited because of my other activities, but I belong to several stakeholder organizations. I belong to MCHA, which is the major stakeholder, number 2 industry in Monterey County after ag. I also belong as a realtor, as a stakeholder, and I belong as president of my neighborhood association in Monterey and as an activist for like 40 years in the community and in a lot of organizations. So there's a lot of stakeholders that were not behind your 152. And the fact that only one member of your board voted to put it to 152 to a vote, despite the fact that you had 15,000 or approximately whatever it was petitions asking for a vote. You know, essentially, and most of you were not around when that came up. I don't think any of you were here. Mr. Stoll was here. But anyway, this was a slap in the face to a lot of stakeholders. And I think that if you want to start something new, you should start it new and fresh and have a full stakeholders committee. It's not too large, but it needs to really represent the organizations that really count on the peninsula and in Monterey County. So anyway, that's just some quick comments. So thank you for getting to this point where you're finally considering repeal of the ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody from the Zoom public?
I see no other raised hands.
Okay.
There is a raised hand.
Okay, back to
Mark.
the board.
Mark, when
No.
you're ready,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it was a late hand.
Late hand. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Mark Kelly. I live in Monterey. I just want to compliment you. It's an elegant solution to a very difficult litigation that's ongoing. And I want to compliment you for the way you're approaching it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes.
What's the timeline to get this back to the board? Do you have one, or a couple of months, or next month, or 90 days out?
I probably say the 90 days out. So I'd
Okay.
like to get it off our desk as well, so I don't want to drag it out, but there's some writing involved. I think, in our history, we've repealed a couple of ordinances, so there's probably a pretty strong model out there.
So,
Okay.
so walk us through the process of the number of board meetings required for this.
Repeal the ordinance, it would just take 2 board meetings. It would be a first reading and then a second reading to complete
And tonight,
adoption.
tonight's direction. And then
Tonight's direction, and then you'd have a first reading of the ordinance to repeal ordinance 152, and then you'd have the second reading to adopt.
Okay, so 2 more meetings after tonight. You just pass it tonight. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'd probably bring you a first reading in 2 board meetings.
Yeah,
and then the
it's
second
not
reading in
particularly
the
urgent. It's just
90
let's
days.
clean up the books for this, and then
Yeah.
we can get on with.
Yeah, I think we need a settlement in front of the court for the taxpayers' lawsuit as well before we
Good point.
do anything with finality on a repeal.
Good point. Good point. And we think it's coming.
It's supposed to be in front of the court.
It should be coming soon.
Yeah.
The hope is, the parties are ironing out the details of the settlement, and then we have to bring it in front of the judge. So I'm not going to put a timeline on
No.
it because, that's the court's job, not
Oh,
mine.
you should. I can hold you to it.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm not.
You're always disappointed when you do that. Okay, is there a motion to,
This is not seeking a motion unless you want to, but we're looking for general direction. It sounds like the direction is to move forward with repealing the ordinance. So
let me just ask the board members, is there anyone opposed to moving forward on this direction? Okay. And Aaron, I know, okay,
so then direction is received
Direction is
and
clear to
we're good to
proceed.
go.
okay. We got Tom Rowley's approval too. Item number 11, the Seaside Basin Technical Memorandum.
Yes, and this is included at the request of the Water Supply Planning Committee, who has already reviewed it. We have long harbored a notion that there's a flow divide on the northern geography of the Seaside Basin that is a physical divide due to hydrogeologic reasons, as opposed to a physical feature that, is a wall or a cliff or anything like that. But, since 2009 and probably even before that, we've also had our suspicions or made the assertion that hydrogeological divide doesn't fall quite in line with the political boundary on the north side of the Seaside Basin. And so in recent times, there's been some louder voices saying, hey, there's leakage over this frontier. And we've said, well, not necessarily so, because there's actually a hydrologic barrier divide between 2 pumping zones, the heavy pumping, let's say in the Marina area north of CSUMB, and then the pumping in Seaside in our area. And those 2 create a cone of depression or a drawdown area. And so the ridge between the 2 is in effect a divide. And that ridge will move a little bit based on pumping and the order of magnitude of pumping on either its northern side or southern side. What it doesn't allow, and what this technical memorandum supports, is that there's not actually leakage. It's not like the water is disappearing from here and heading on a path that makes it forever unrecoverable. What it means is that Mother Nature doesn't honor political boundaries. And so what we have here is then discussion over at the Water Master about the need for protective water levels or replenishment supplies, and in order to prevent future seawater intrusion, which also is not evident yet. We don't have seawater intrusion like the Salinas Valley the Salinas groundwater basin has in the 400 and the 180-foot aquifers where there are intruded seawater intrusion zones. So we don't have it, but you know, some folks say it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Other folks say we don't know if it'll ever happen. But the idea of replenishment water supplies or protective water levels is to prevent seawater intrusion from ever happening. But the discussion about how much water is needed for that purpose is also derived from some mathematics that includes, well, we have this much leakage every year. And this technical memorandum answers the question that there is no constant and predictable level of leakage that happens every year, if at all. And so maybe the component of the math that says, here's how much water we need per year to get protective water levels in the Seaside Basin, perhaps should not be based in part on this concept of leakage. So that is the background. John Lear is available here, who knows all of this in a much greater technical level. I don't know if, John, you want to add to it. Our goal here today is to also get direction from the board as to whether or not you'd like this district to communicate with the water master on what these findings are, because this was our contract, our concept study. The Water Supply Planning Committee has already recommended some additional work based on the potential scope that the consultant has provided. And you should know that it is the same consultant that does serve the water master in the capacity as the water master's consultant. So, John, if there's anything.
Sure. Let me, it's easier for me to talk. Can you guys see the graphics up here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just give a brief history of it, and what this a thumbnail sketch of what this memo is saying is when the Seaside Basin was adjudicated, the judge in the decision needed a map to say this is the legal extent of the Seaside Basin. This report with this map that we're showing now came out of a USGS report that was published in 1982 that was based on water levels in the Seaside Basin and the Salinas Basin that were collected in 1979. And at this point in time, the Santa Margarita aquifer hadn't been discovered yet. It was discovered in the early 90s. So this is just basically a map of groundwater flow directions in the shallow aquifer zone. It's showing, as Dave was saying, where it's depicting on this map that at this point in time, this data is indicating that if water falls to the north of this line, it's going to stay in the Salinas Basin. Water falls to the south of this line, it's going to head into the Seaside Basin. So this was the map that was legally included into the Seaside adjudication decision and is the actual map to which the Seaside the water master has the authority. We move on to on this map, which this dark line here is this boundary here, which was the adjudicated legal boundary. But this work was done in 2005, as Dave was saying. And what we have now is we've now discovered that there's a deep zone, which is flow boundary now is this in 2005. And the shallow zone, the boundary has moved to here. And as Dave stated correctly, that it moves around due to different pumping stresses and different recharges and wetter years and drier years. But what you have going on here now is if water falls to the north of this orange line, it's going to flow into the Salinas Valley. Well, if you're measuring flow across the adjudicated line, it's going to look like water's leaving the basin. But it's really, this is the physical boundary, or as Dave stated, this is Mother Nature's boundary, not the political boundary. The leakage number is based on measuring fluxes at this boundary. And then when you look at the deep aquifer, if water were to fall on this side, it would cross this boundary, look like it's leaving the basin. But if water were to fall on this side, in fact, it would flow across this line and look like water's entering the basin from the Monterey sub area. So it is a thing that, as Dave stated, that we had discovered in 2005 and knew this was going on, but the boundary, this boundary is the legal boundary that's been included in the decision. So what we did was to ask the consultant, well, that was done in 2005. It's now 2025. We have 20 more years of data. Can you look at, we have this groundwater model. Can you look at how these boundaries have moved around in these 25 years, in these 20 years of data, extra data we have? And it's moved from this yellow line over to this black line, and it moves back and forth between these lines. But as you can see, it's not following the adjudicated line. And as a conclusion in the technical memorandum, is that it's probably not appropriate to base fluxes in and out of the Seaside Basin, or to characterize how the Seaside Basin is interacting with the Monterey sub-basin based on fluxes across this political line that was drawn with data from the late 70s. And so that's basically what I read from this memo.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. And just on that slide you were just on, what was the other boundary line? And the yellow looked like a claw.
Those are the yellow line to the black
Oh,
line.
it's the red line that you didn't discuss at all. That other line.
The big one.
The
one
big
that
one.
Everything else is within that.
It is so what you have going on here at this, it has some implications, because not only is it the adjudicated boundary and the physical boundary that's moving around, you also have what's called a Department of Water Resources Bulletin 118 boundaries, which don't agree with this physical boundary also, which is how the Department of Water Resources in Sacramento has drawn the dividing lines between the different groundwater resource agencies. And so the Seaside Basin, the district, as well as Monterey sub area, as well as the state of California, probably all need to sit down and talk about the implications of trying to manage with hard lines in the ground a line that's moving around. And so the red line, to answer your question, is the view of the world from the state of California, which doesn't match the data either.
Okay.
And just for clarification, I think it's actually purple.
I couldn't.
And the red are the roads.
And what would it be in the table? We just can't read it. Dell area? Or something?
Probably model area.
Model area, thank you. That's probably it.
I'm sorry. Here's the figure again, so it's large. But this right here is the boundary that the state thinks is the boundary of the Seaside sub area, which we know actually holds. This is the Monterey groundwater resource agencies area right now. And so we went through an exercise in maybe 2017 when Sigma came around. We modified some of these boundaries so they're even a little bit different, trying to fix this situation. But we've known about this problem since 2005, and then kind of had 20 more years of data to kind of study it. And so if Dave's point is, if you're trying to add water to the Seaside Basin to raise water levels along the coast so seawater can't come into it, you're protected from it, and you need certain amount to do that, but then you go and you say, well, I also am losing X amount of water each year because it's just leaving the basin, because you've based that number on the political boundary. Those aren't things you can add together and say I need all of this water because the second one isn't. It's absolutely true if you're measuring the fluxes along the political boundary that water is moving that direction, but it's just simply you're measuring in the wrong spot.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, there's been there's a little difference of opinion between the district and the water master. What are the steps going forward? What do you see?
Well, again, this is a discussion item, but we would appreciate some general direction to staff. If you'd like us to write a letter, include the memorandum and the findings to the water master, we would do that. Beyond that, I think that there's a whole series of things related to the concept of protective water levels that have not been they've not been lined up in the proper order. And what I mean by that is when the first study on protective water levels came out, there was a calculated amount of water that would be appropriate if injected at seaside wells, and then a different amount of water, a higher amount of water that would be appropriate if injected in more inland, General Jim Moore Boulevard. In a recent memorandum to the Water Master Board, that distinction was kind of blurred. And then there was also an implication that there's injection capacity already existing, that the infrastructure has been built. And I think that thinking by Water Master staff was based on the Pure Water Monterey injection wells, of which there will be 6 shortly. And the addition of 2 to the existing 4, as well as our ASR injection wells. But protective water level water sources are ultimately going to be either a desalination plant or Pure Water Monterey water. But no one's inquired whether there is surplus capacity. And if you increase injection, let's say, for example, the Pure Water Monterey wells, you could increase travel times. The injectable Pure Water Monterey water is deemed to be wastewater until it's resident in the ground for a certain period of time. So those wells are not permitted for potable water. The ASR wells are permitted for potable water, but as you know, in our discussion just earlier today, we've got no excess capacity for the injection season. And so there's some infrastructure issues that have never been really settled at the water master level. The financing of how you would pay for water, even if water is available, has not been settled at the water master level. The trade-off between the cost of purchased water and infrastructure, in other words, would it make more sense to build wells closer to the coast and spend the money on capital and buy less water for injection versus building more capacity further inland but requiring more water? Well, that cost benefit analysis depends on the cost of your purchased water. And if purchased water is desal water, and if it's a smaller plant at a higher cost, then maybe you don't want to pick the more water required infrastructure, but the less water required infrastructure. None of that work has been done. So the starting point is this memorandum is a known quantity because we've been asking the question, we have the answer, would like to share that. We've had some discussion with representatives of the water master who say, well, that's your opinion. It's the second opinion, but the water master is going to have its opinion. And that's fine, but we should decide whether we want to provide the data point. And then next steps after that would be to provide additional district philosophy or direction on these other somewhat unresolved issues.
the consultant here, Montgomery and Associates, also works for the water master.
Correct.
So there's a credibility, there's no credibility gap here at all. It seems to me.
True.
And so, and then I don't see this as a high priority item for action, but a high priority item for let's getting the ground, let's do the groundwork needed to make sure we're all agreeing on the same basis point, which is the boundary of the basin is not the boundary of the hydraulic actions. And if water master can accept that or work with that, there's also the the Salinas Valley Basin GSA. They have their data points as well. And so I just think there's several agencies that have a role here about trying to agree on what the data is telling us. Anyway, that's my thought. Yeah, comments.
I liked the idea, since the report was commissioned, of just writing a letter and sending it along. I thought that made a lot of sense.
Great.
I couldn't hear you. I liked the idea of writing a letter, attaching your report and sending it along. To who? The Seaside Groundwater Water Master.
Water master.
Water Master.
Let me ask Karen if she has a point of view. I haven't. Just to make sure she's hearing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of reasons not to do. No, I think it makes sense to send it along. I guess the only question arose in my mind. In addition to the water master, would it make sense to share it also with the GSAs? Just asking the question. But the water master, yeah, I think we should. And
I can
share
offer
it with,
the,
I mean, it's already a public record.
and I can offer the information that I have
John,
spoken
yeah.
with the technical members of the other GSAs, and they are already aware of it. Would not be surprised if they got a letter with the
Oh.
support.
Okay, good. Okay.
So I think the consensus is, communicate with the water master about all this. You might just CC the GSA.
Yeah, sounds good.
As well. So,
Will do.
okay, no.
John, do you-
I'm sorry.
Let's just ask John. I'd like to ask John since I'm sorry, my internet connection is not great, so everything's a little choppy. I just thought we should check with John since he's chair of the technical committee. If you have an opinion on sharing it or anything we should be thinking about that we haven't considered related to this question of whether
I
we
think
should share it with
I
the
think
water master.
this is a perfect topic to bring to the TAC. I don't think the TAC has weighed in completely on the methodology that was used at the full water master board for the number, the 3,600 acre foot a year number that was adopted. And I think that's exactly the job of the technical advisory committee, is to look at that stuff.
Okay, so the technical advisory committee, yes, but the water master also, right? I mean, I realize the technical advisory committee is under the water master, but shouldn't we send the letter to the water master directly as well?
Yes, I think, and I'll yield to Dave, but I think it should go to the water master board proper, and then as the chair, as the district being the chair at the advisory committee, could recommend that item be brought as a technical item to the technical advisory committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I support that.
Okay, this doesn't take a motion.
I would recommend providing a motion to authorize the general manager to send the letter.
Okay,
But first, take it out to public comment.
you're right. Okay. Public comment locally, in-house?
Yep. Yes, I have Susan Shivani. Susan, when you're ready.
Yes, please do send a letter, send the information. Once the information is in someone's hand, then they have an option to respond to that information. If they don't get all of it, they won't have all of it to look at and to make a point to now pay attention to that. So yes, please do send the letter. I think it's great, and I'm glad you're sharing that information with them.
Mr. Kelly, when you're ready.
I'd like to support John.
Go ahead, Mark.
Got the you got the Salinas Valley GSA, you got the Seaside Water Master, you have the district. We all know the water's moving back and forth between the Monterey Subbasin. It's all that's fungible. That's difficult to argue with. Obviously the valley has to be in total balance by 2040, which is yesterday. And if we could actually get the district and the water master and the GSA involved in the conversation with the State Water Resource Control Board, in which they could actually begin to understand water boundaries as opposed to political boundaries, that would be an enormous success. And I at least maybe unless I missed John's point, that is right now that's a flaw, and we're trying to get accomplished. They've drawn these political boundaries that have nothing to do with where water moves. And if there's a way to modify that in the process that you're all involved in right now, that would be a success for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I was a representative here on the Water Master for a number of years. And I've been trying to propose to the Water Master, and it's been slow, but I've been slow as well. To develop a revenue source if they can have if they have a revenue source available to them, because what their status is that they have no revenue source at all, and yet they have big ideas, and the big idea of what they want is more water in the basin, and then they look to the district to provide more water. And so it's easy. It's like Christmas time for them. They can just ask, but somebody else is going to pay the bill. And so I think part of this discussion with them is not only let's get an understanding of what the hydraulic boundaries are, or the relationship to the surface level boundary, and then ask the water master to develop a little more details about how they think this ought to proceed. Because if they don't have a revenue source, then I don't think they have much credibility in whatever they say. But until they get a revenue source, or at least they evaluate what their revenue source potential is and act on it, then I think they're still playing, they're playing Santa Claus. I mean, we're the Santa Claus, they're asking. So until they have those kind of discussions, I think this is not going to get very far as far as I'm concerned, because I don't think we're going to just be available to what they want. It's got to be a shared project of sorts. Okay, well,
if we have the discussions with, as John said, with and Mr. Kelly, with the other with the groundwater basin and the group, was it four entities? If that was a group discussion with the water master involved in it, that seems to me would be maybe there would be a little bit, what do I want to say? If the group looks at it and sees it the same, that's pressure. That's not for solutions, but for people to understand that, to talk and come to the same conclusion that this is what this means. Maybe there's other studies. I know they did suggest other studies to follow up on this, but having maybe more than two organizations with two different ideas coming together, if you had four, I think that you might come to might be easier to talk.
Well, the two with legal responsibilities around the basin is the water master and the district.
Yeah.
So those are the two key ones. If other people can be joining and understanding and sharing the dialogue and so on, that's one thing. But I think it's really between the district and the water master to have this initial discussion. But it may go wider than that.
Well, George, Chair, the problem that I have with this is we got two entities that one entity is sitting up there saying we're gonna do what we feel like doing. And we got our report, you did a report, but our report is gonna be the one that we're probably gonna stand by.
It's the same engineer.
With the same engineering company, but I like for us to send it, do what we're gonna do is send it over. I call it a second opinion, but sooner or later, Cal-Am is gonna put water in the basin and they're gonna charge the ratepayer. And as far as I'm concerned, we protect the ratepayers. So getting all this evidence together, putting these reports together, sooner or later, it's gonna have to go to the PUC until we buy Cal-Am. Until then, the PUC is gonna be, jacking up rates if they go with putting this water into the basin for protected water levels. So, what we're doing now, I feel good about it, and they may agree with it, and they may not agree with it. But, I gotta stand by the district. That's who I'm representing over there, and we're footing the bill to get these reports done, the general manager to do what he's doing. So that's where this is at. The president of the water master sits on our board this year. It's Mayor Oglesby. So
yeah.
That's why I stand. I'm glad we're gonna send a letter over. They may take it, they may not take it. I got the assumption over there, they're gonna do what they wanna do over there. We seen that with LAFCO. But,
Well, to me, I mean, the implications of this data are pretty big.
well,
And, if there's future studies to be done that would clarify the things that they suggested doing. I can't remember them now, but I know they're in there.
Well, I think to your point of trying to get all four parties to agree would be great. It may be challenging. We've got a certain scenario that yields certain results that's favored more by one party, and then other things modeling. It's just like our phase 2 proceeding on supply and demand at the commission right now.
Right.
Understood.
Yeah.
Well, this report was done at the request of understanding the hydraulic boundaries. I think what the water master has normally asked Montgomery to do is tell us what's happening at the legal boundaries. And so they get a data set for the legal boundaries, and we've seen here that the hydraulic boundaries are different. And that's where we need to have a discussion about, what data are we going to work with? Well,
it's new information from their engineers who discovered this. So that's a strong, if they trusted the information about the legal boundaries. But then now they found out that that's not what the water's doing. I don't know. They trust their sources.
Well, I think Alvin's right. I mean, they're looking at the boundary line, what's happening within the boundary line. Well, we know that underneath, water has its own, dynamics. And so that's the focus of the water master. Our focus is on understanding the water. We need to convince the water master that understanding the water will lead to some steps that maybe we can all agree on.
Yeah.
And until that happens, until they get the report, until they have a discussion, until Jonathan and his committee kind of goes over the details, then I think we're ahead of ourselves in what we're talking about. I would
agree. I would agree. I think we send a letter and we send the study and we move on.
And make a motion.
I move that we send the study to the Seaside Water Master with a letter from Dave Stolt and looking for a second.
I'll second it for you.
Okay, let's all, no, I can't say all in favor. A roll call, please.
Do we need to?
Well, I don't know. Is there any more comments on the motion?
Okay. I just hate seeing data ignored.
That's my comment.
Okay.
I think
I
this
do
is a
have-
move towards seeing the data. I mean,
Yeah.
this is really
Yeah,
good.
that's-
I do have one comment to add to what Karen had said, that we should also CC the GSA on this as well.
Happy to add that to my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's amended. Roll
Okay.
call, please.
Yes, Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Lindor,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Director Daniels,
Yes.
Director Edwards.
Yes.
Chair Riley.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
And I'm sorry to ask another question about that, but Salinas Valley Basin GSA we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also a GSA for the Monterey Subbasin,
Which is on the boundary.
which is on the boundary. So
Which is Marina.
yes,
So it should be both
So
GSAs.
just.
Yeah.
Just let them.
get everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.
So they don't feel left out.
Okay, well, that's the end of the official.
Mr. Chair,
Unless-
before we adjourn, I just wanted to check. We have 3 members of the public, but one was late. And I don't know if you came to speak on any item or just to observe, but don't need to break protocol. But
Yeah.
if you had comment that you were late for or an item that you missed, we could
Thank
possibly.
you for recognizing me. I do not, and I apologize for my tardiness. I have this listed as 7:00
Hmm.
board meeting. Jeremy Hallock, Vice Mayor, representing the city of Delray Oaks. It's my first time, so I'm just getting my sea legs, reservoir legs, as it were. And happy to be here just in observance for tonight, but looking forward to how I can contribute and best represent the city of Delray Oaks and be of maximum and effective service to the board.
Well,
Thank you.
welcome to our meeting and nice seeing you.
And they're always at 6.
Good to know.
Old time with 7.
Unless you're looking. for-
Okay, if there's nothing else to add or comment on, meeting adjourned. Great.
All right.
You.